So Global Health Solution present HeartQuest is HRV as a functional assessment tools for research and education purpose only. So today we will showing up what's the B parameters and how to interpret. First of all, so you want to find out what's the weakest area. So in this case, so we see the A parameters, B parameters, C and D. And if you notice, so the B parameters is the lowest one. So this is what I represent autonomic nervous system regulation. When we're kind of like comparing to A, B, C, D parameters, so this why, so we're looking for which parameter from A, B, C, D is the lowest one. This is the area which need to more attention. So in this case, so the B parameters need more attention. So let's see what's the B parameter. So the B parameter is represent autonomic nervous system. An autonomic nervous system have two branches. It's parasympathetic nervous system and a sympathetic nervous system, which is represent high frequency, which is represent parasympathetic nervous system, which is quick and efficient part of the autonomic nervous system. And then so the low frequency, which is represent more sympathetic parts of the autonomic nervous system. So autonomic nervous system is more energy efficient regulatory system than the neurohormonals. So let's take a peek and see what's going on. So the B parameter is showing up so how this autonomic nervous system have a relationship with neurohormonals. So this is what we see on the pie. So we see how much we have input from the high frequencies, low frequencies and very low frequencies. In this case, so the high frequency and low frequencies represent more autonomic nervous system. Very important another parameter to look is how much we have regulatory, like index of centralization, which is showing up so how much we have effect from autonomic nervous system or central nerve regulation. In this case, so we see it's on a green zone, it's balanced, but to analyze so how autonomic nervous system is doing, so this parameter called autonomic nervous system balance index. In the normal, so it's running between 35 and 145. In this case, so we see it's kind of like a little bit over the limits, and this why so it's kind of like will represent so the high frequency is a little bit higher, and this is like one of the good parameter. But we see so the vital forces kind of like start dropping down. So this is what will be very important for the continued interpretation, how we can interpret this kind of like parameter in the future. But this is quick kind of like overview. So this is the early stage of adrenal insufficiency. So this why so we see parasympathetic nervous system is a little bit predominant. Autonomic nervous system balance is out of the range, and then so the vital forces start dropping. So very important. So let's look a little bit more in deep over here. So this is what we kind of like see in a pie. Index of centralization in the normal, autonomic nervous system balance. So we see so that the predominant of the parasympathetic nervous system, but with a low vitality. So it's kind of like will tell us it's early stage of the autonomic nervous system imbalance. So what's the regulatory system? So the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system regulating the different organs, and in this case, so we see so it's connecting to the internal organs, and the parasympathetic nervous system will affect the constriction of the pupil, stimulating the tears glands, strong stimulation of salivary glands, slow heart rate, construction of the bronchioles, the stimulating digestive juice secretion, stimulating the intestinal motility, contraction of the bladder, and so as the opposite side, so the sympathetic nervous system is actually producing the different opposite effect than the parasympathetic nervous system. So autonomic nervous system is more efficient in this case because they will send this information through the nerve, and then so they will just producing the small amount of the neurotransmitters affecting the target area, which is kind of like quickly can be changing from sympathetic and parasympathetic. So this why so it's more efficient and more better regulatory system, more reliable regulatory system in the body than the neurohormonal regulation. So basically this is what we covered, the B parameters, which is kind of like very important to see how the autonomic nervous system is working, and so what we can see Again, so when we look over here, so we see so the B parameter is low, and why it's low showing up, because the autonomic nervous system balance index is going out of this balance, and this why so they need attention. And due to this kind of like we see it's early stage of adrenal insufficiency, so we're probably so adrenal support will be more appropriate for this case. In the next video we will cover up the C parameter and explains how the relationship to the C parameter and different neurohormonal regulatory system. Thank you. So Global Health Solution present HeartQuest HRV functional assessment tools for research and education purpose only. So let's go and see what's the another parameter. So it's a C parameter, so which we call neurohormonal regulation. So when we pay attention for the C parameters, so when we look A, B, C, and D parameters in this case, so we see so A parameter is 90, B parameter is 96, D parameter is 84, but the C parameters is 67. So we see so this is the lowest one. So something is going on the C level, on the C parameters, on the C level of neurohormonal regulation. In this case, so we need to look more close and see what is actually going on at this level. So what's the C parameters represent? So basically it's information from the autonomic nervous system, sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, which is send information, and then neurohormonal regulation, which is send information to the medulla and subcortical area. So the C parameters basically represent is a subcortical area, so how they interpret the results from autonomic nervous system and neurohormonal regulation. So the C parameters and the neurohormonal regulation affecting the subcortical area. So the subcortical area is, well, affecting so many things. It's creative imagination, problem solving, self-awareness, kindness, rare fear, separation or distress, craving, nutrients, social bonding, playfulness, and then some fear and stress. So they will affecting the breathing, heart, and digestion. So this is very important to survive. So this is why so the subcortical area will interpret all this information from inside and outside, so through the baroreceptors, through the chemical receptors, and interpret this information, and then so they will send this information back into the different part of the regulatory system, like neurohormonals, like HPA axis, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis. So this why so we want to find out like what is going on and how we can interpret this information. So the C parameter is basically neurohormonal regulation matrix. So basically it's kind of like a survival camera. So they will analyzing the all frequency, high frequency, very low frequency, and low frequency from the rhythmogram. And so they will looking not only just percentage, so they're looking for how they will follow each other, what combination to each other so they have. So if it's like combination LHF, LF, LFH, VLF, so basically this is kind of like will give us information how, what part of this and how frequently so this regulatory system is affecting. So that's why so when we interpret the C parameter, so we're looking for what's this number. In this case we see the 15, in this case we see the 27. So basically I icon will explain how to read these parameters. So if you look over here, so from 0 to 17 it's a highly disturbed neurohormonal regulation. From 17 to 33 it's a disturbed neurohormonal regulation. From 33 to the 50 it's unstable neurohormonal regulation. From the 50 to the 66 is average to above neurohormonal regulation. From 66 to the 83, so it's average stable neurohormonal regulation, and the best parameter is optimal neurohormonal regulation from 83 to the 100. So this is what a kind of like icon will showing up, and it will give you some information how quickly to interpret. So what's the actually inside? So basically it's a kind of like a loop feedback. So we showing up so how much we have information going, like chronic long stress negatively will impact the HPA axis, and imbalance on the HPA axis eventually will lead to destruction, dysfunction of the other endocrine system, and it's like a domino effect can lead to disruption of the thyroid, reproductive organ, metabolism, and the mental function. So that's why we create the parameter which called the HPA axis distortion. So the HPA axis distortion have numbers and showing up in a different zone or corridors. Well, so from the green corridors is start from the 0 to the 15, which is kind of like ideal. So we would like to stay. If it will be some mild distortion on an HPA axis, we see it's from the 50 to the 100. So this is the number on the bottom will represent what they have. So we're showing up in a yellow zone in 77. So basically in this case, so we see it's right over here. One is like moderate distortion. So we see the parameters pushing into the orange zone, and it's between the 100 and 150. When it's highly distorted, so the parameter HPA axis distortion parameter will running between 150 and 200. It will be showing up on the red zone, where we see it's a lot of distortion on the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal glands. So we need to see, we look for the adrenal glands imbalance, thyroid imbalance, and other hormonal imbalance. So this is what they kind of like cover up for the C parameters and what we're looking for the neurohormonal matrix. And this again, so it's kind of like a combination, what kind of like a frequency the following HF, LF, and VLF. So basically this matrix is showing up what's the combination. It's like a Morse code, like short and long, short and long. So basically high frequency, low frequency, and very low frequency. So how they will combine in a, let's say in a triplet, for example. So how these triplets will be combined together, and then how they will follow to each other. So this why, so usually we explain like in a survival camera. So when with survival camera will give some information, so how many people, for example, in the 1 hour, so they came, let's say so 300 people came in, but we want to find out who came in, men, women, or the kids, or the combination like a man and woman, or a man with the kids, or women with the kids. So basically it will kind of like will give us information what's the pattern, so we can see with a neurohormonal matrix. So this is kind of like a little bit more in deep information, which is kind of like other system heart rate variability on the market. So they doesn't have this information, and doesn't give us information about the neurohormonal regulation, C parameters, or HPA axis distortion. I think so. This is what the coverage for the C parameters.